and good afternoon, everybody. Just a question, is Jeff Scott still in the audience from Davol? He may not be. Okay, well, I stole a quote from him this morning. He said, "Innovation occurs when you get people out of their comfort zone." And that applies to my presentation. I'm not a health economist, and nonetheless, the field of health economics is very important to me. I'm going to try and, apparently I'm told that you need to define your terms if you're going to talk about health economics. And really central to this is what is health. So health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So I'm not sure how our healthcare system necessarily focuses on that, but that's how it would be seen as a patient or a consumer. And of course, the system is the organization of people, institutions, and resources that deliver health care to meet those needs. And therefore, the goals of the system are good health, responsiveness to the population, and a fair financial contribution. So health care has evolved over the years from being the philosophical to being the nutritional, to being the pharmaceutical, to being the medical technological, and now we're going nano. So it continues to evolve and contribute to well-being. A good friend of ours, many of us in the room, Les Levine from OTAC, has this slide, which I stole from him, which I really like. And I think what it emphasizes is just that medical technologies in very specific areas are usurping drugs, and there's a good reason for that, because rather than their application being statistical and metabolic, it's basically hardwired, and so therefore, if it can sense, it can respond. And so you've seen that products like defibrillators and ablators and other applications, have replaced conventional drug therapies. And then there's the question of the system and who is it serving. And I have a feeling that slide may not be readable, but it sort of shows all the various stakeholders involved in healthcare. And the question is, are they all there for the benefits of the system or the patient? Whoops, going a little too fast. Because what we find is that throughout the system, there are many, concentric wheels spinning. We sometimes refer to as silos. And are they all really improving the mechanical advantage of the system? And then moving into this area we've talked so much about today of innovation, and really the distinction that's been made is that innovation and invention are not necessarily the same thing. Invention, of course, I think is obvious, and that's really what starts everything. But in most medical technologies, the initial invention may address a small population in a sub-perfect way, and it's really the ongoing continuous innovation that really gets you, from a very simple device to a complex device that treats a large number of people. And this is just an example that we've lived in Medtronic. I'm just giving the example of the insulin pump, which really has a long history. Medtronic actually got into this field via acquisition, but the original insulin pumps were developed in the 70s. In fact, were once the size of a backpack, and you can see that very rapidly over time, not only has the pump itself evolved, but we've been able to integrate sensing. And then ultimately, our most recent product that you see at the bottom right that we introduced in 2010 actually integrates the sensing of continuous subcutaneous blood sugar with things like predictive alerts to the patient, low blood glucose suspend, and also it's also a communication device that allows patients and doctors to track blood sugar over 5-minute intervals over weeks so that they can see the highs and the lows and appropriately adapt either the treatment or the lifestyle. So, innovation happens, our product life cycle typically is in the 18-month time frame. Another thing that we've lived through is just the multiple applications of the pacemaker, which originally was for what's called bradyarrhythmias or slow heart rates, has gone to also deal with fast heart rates, but is dealing with target organs and cell groups in the brain and all over the body. So anyways, that's sort of the innovation side, but what about the value side? What's the value? And value, of course, depends on who you are. In other words, the perspective of the patient, what is valuable to them and what improves, in fact, their quality of life or their ability to return to work or enjoy family or recreation. There's also the perspective of the time horizon, because devices, by their very nature, they're not being consumed continuously. Many of them are implanted or worn over long periods of time. So it has an upfront cost and probably should be looked at more like buying a house than renting a room. And then finally, the all-critical outcomes, because you simply have to demonstrate with medical evidence that the outcomes are improved and that they're providing value. And so the theme of value, and I think it was referred to earlier today, comes from Michael Porter and many of his recent publications about healthcare. What is value in healthcare? And really wanting to emphasize that value is not cost, and it defines a framework for performance improvement. It's value to the patient, not only to the system. That value needs to also reward, though, other players in the system, and cost effectiveness would be an example of that. And it's really relative to the outcomes. What's the value versus what you get for it in terms of patient outcome? Some other perspectives, again, it's the outcomes achieved and not the volumes of services provided, and that's a key area that needs to be focused on. And again, it's not about how you get there, but it's about what it delivers. So overall, our contention is that cost reduction without regard to outcomes is dangerous and self-defeating, leading to false savings and potentially limiting effective care. And forgive me for being a little bit defensive, because we're always told that health technology is driving costs in the health system. And it's our contention that, in fact, technology innovation is not the root of cost escalations. We do represent about 3% of the healthcare dollar, but we bring tremendous value, and there are many, many examples of that. I'm just going to go ahead here. This is just a societal look at it, which was done by the German Economic Affairs Ministry, which talked about the direct costs of medical technologies increased from 2002 to 2008 by about 100 billion euros. But the prevention of loss of productive years and other positive values meant that there was still a net societal gain of 22 billion. So again, it's about the value, and it's actually about the ecosystem. A further study that was done in the U.S., and I can't quite read, but it was I think AdvaMed, which is the medical device group in the U.S. that brought this forward, is that a job in medical technology generates an additional 1.5 jobs in the community. So some of the realities, again, when you're looking at the cost of devices that may be a little different than drugs, and you have to look at the whole environment. We already talked about that they're upfront, but also they may require changes in the infrastructure. They may get people out of the hospital in shorter periods of time. They do require extensive training of health human resources. And we like displacing drugs. There are competitors for a larger chunk of the healthcare dollar. Drugs, I think, account for about 18%. We account for 3%. And the trend in devices is to go less invasive so that patients no longer, endure a long convalescence post-surgery. The other point there, narrow time frame for market share. Again, we have a very limited period of time. We don't have a 20-year patent protection. We do have patent protection, but the pace of innovation is so rapid that realistically, you get about 18 months out of a new product. Thank you.